Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our Virtual Connect series for 2021. I'm Mike Waldinger, CEO for AI Colorado, and we're delighted to have you join us today. We thought we'd start the year off in this series with some good news. In this first one, we're going to show you the money, some opportunities that you have to apply for scholarships and grants and other assistance in your professional journey from an organization that we've been a partner with for a very long time, that does a great job of helping people advance the profession of architecture and let the public know about architectural education and what this profession does for them. We've got a series of panelists today who can tell you how it has personally benefited them. I'm going to do a couple of notes here real quick, though. We are obviously interested in having your questions and your feedback, so please use the Q&A function as we get to those questions. We're going to do that at the end after we hear from each of the presenters today. And I want to welcome all of them for joining us. So first up, I think this is also the order of presentations as well. Meg Schubert Allen. Hi, Meg. Meg is a project architect at Stantec with over 8 years of experience working in transportation, office, K-12, and higher education student life projects. Meg graduated with her Bachelor of Architecture from the University of Arizona in 2012, after which she moved to Denver to start her career in architecture. As an architect, she believes in putting the needs and well-being of users at the forefront of a project design while prioritizing a symbiotic relationship with its place and the environment. Meg's passion for community building also extends to the architecture community itself. She is actively engaged in supporting and advancing the architecture profession and enrolls on multiple committees through AI Colorado. She's previously served on the AI Colorado Board of Directors, chaired the Path to Licensure Committee, and co-chaired and helped launch the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, where she remains an active volunteer. That is Meg. Up first, we also have Jenny Kivett. Hi, Jenny.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Graduating with a professional master's degree in architecture during the peak of the 2008 economic recession, good times, Jenny Kivett started her career as a university assistant professor teaching at the University of Kansas, Mississippi State University, and the University of Louisiana Lafayette. After starting a family, she moved to Colorado and began practicing architecture in a more traditional setting. She's experienced working on different project types, including schools, design build, residential, sustainable design, and master planning. Her work has received significant awards, including the NCARB Prize, the AI Education Honor Award, the Wood Design Award, LEED Platinum Certification, and the Charles E. Peterson Prize. She's an author, contributing to several books and publications in architecture. She currently serves as the Professional Development Chair for AI Colorado's newly formed Local Advisory Council and is a licensed architect at Craine Architecture in Denver. I'm glad to have you. And finally, we have Victor Gonzalez. Hi, Victor.
Hi, everyone.
Victor is a senior in the program. So he's our youngest member. So senior in the program of environmental design at the University of Colorado Boulder. He's also the vice president of the American Institute of Architecture student chapter at CU Boulder, which is one of the best in the country and currently lays claim to having the national vice president of AIS among their members. He's the 2020 to 2021 AIS National Advocate, the executive chair for Designers Without Boundaries, and a member, along with some of our other folks who are on this panel today, of AI Colorado's Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, and as well serving on the editorial committee of AI Colorado. Thanks, Victor. I don't know where you find the time, but we're glad to have it. And last but certainly not least, the reason we're all talking today and have award winners to share with you is Bob Fuller. Hi, Bob.
I'm sorry for the issues this morning and joining you late. Thank you, Mike, for including me in this process. And thanks to all of you for joining your interest in the Architectural Education Foundation. The foundation is almost 100 years old from its inception and has existed for, in one form or another, for about that long. It was started by 5 young architects and a project that caused them considerable frustration. And at the end of it, they took the fees that were left and they invested those funds back in 1934. And by 1960 they awarded a scholarship finally. It had grown enough to throw at least one scholarship. And over the interval since then, it's grown considerably. And now there's a number of, depending on the year, 10 or 12 academic scholarships and another 4 or 5 traveling grants that are offered. And it's a real pleasure to be involved with it and awarding these funds to the interested parties. I'm not sure how many we have on this morning, but hopefully we have some people that are interested in applying. And Mike and the AIA office can help you with the details. It's pretty well spelled out on the website. The foundation makes these available to academic scholarships, and it's primarily through the University of Colorado. The initial concept of the foundation was to improve the knowledge base of the architects in the state of Colorado. Not that we haven't sent students to other schools and other countries. The traveling grants are a little different. They're earmarked for certain specific types of travel or certain specific types of study. And some are almost totally restricted to intercontinental travel, and a couple are restricted just to travel to study of the architecture of the Americas. So depending on what you're applying for, it's important to read the descriptions to see what you get. And if you're interested in the academic scholarships, the primary vehicle for those is through whatever school you're attending. We're trying to broaden our base a bit and make it available to students, not just at the University of Colorado in the architectural program, but the Boulder program in environmental design, as well as the community colleges in the area that have a program that leads to an architectural, enrolling in an architectural program. Initially, the scholarships were restricted to architecturally accredited programs, and we've broadened that base somewhat to include programs that like the environmental design program in Boulder that have a little broader base. So I don't want to bore you with a lot of history. I'll be happy to answer any questions, but I appreciate Mike and the AIA office putting this on today to kind of get a little exposure for those that may have questions and those that have an interest in either applying this year or in future years. And that's all I have, Mike, unless you want to, elucidate it.
No, that gets us off to a good start. And Bob is characteristically modest and didn't provide a bio, but I can tell you he has a direct through line to those early days of the foundation through his family. He is the longtime secretary treasurer of the foundation and can really tell you all the good work that's been done over many years. And we, of course, wouldn't be able to talk about these programs without the work of AEF. And they really, so you mentioned the website. I've posted a link to that in the chat if anybody wants to see the specifics on each program that we have up for application this year. That deadline, of course, March 1st. And it's not insignificant. The foundation, I'm privileged to be able to sit as an ex officio member in those deliberations every year. And it's in the tens of thousands of dollars in the numbers of awards that go out. And because Bob won't say it, I will do it for him. We can do even more with additional contributions. So there's a variety of ways that you can direct your money based on the programs we're already doing. If you see something that you like, and we'd like to do even more scholarships that align with your interest and passion, I'm sure Bob will find a way to take that contribution from you and put it to good use along with his fellow trustees.
We're working on several. Thank you, Mike. I didn't want to hit everybody up with a fundraising entree right off the bat, but yeah, you'll notice that a number of the scholarships are named after prominent architects whose families or firms contributed to the foundation to endow a scholarship. But there are also some, such as the Oscar Sanchez one, that came from much more modest beginnings. And Oscar, in his dying wishes, wanted to include that scholarship, and he and his friends just among themselves at $100 a pop or $25 a pop, were able to raise enough to endow a $2,500 annual scholarship in perpetuity. These scholarships go on forever and ever, and the foundation takes nothing other than postage and stationary costs out of the assets. So it's truly a volunteer effort, and there's no one getting rich on this end, that's for sure. But it's a worthy cause, and if you know of anyone in your firm that you'd like that has passed, there have been funds that have left in their names. Contributions are always available to the general fund of the Education Foundation, if not specifically designated toward a scholarship. We're working on 3 right now towards endowment before we can actually start awarding them. So there's a lot of vehicles that are available to make funds, and I thank Mike for suggesting that you consider that or suggest it to your friends. But architects typically don't make a lot of money, and so there's not a lot of architects out there that are going to throw a whole pile of cash at the Education Foundation unless it's done through a network of friends and professional associates. So I will leave it there.
Okay, thanks. And because architects don't make a lot of money and because their education costs a lot of money, that's why we have these opportunities. And believe it or not, not all of these opportunities are applied for on an annual basis. Even though they're available on an annual basis, we don't always give them away as a foundation. So that's why we thought we would share the word and spread the news about this program with as many people who want to hear about it. Although the participants on the call today probably don't want us to share it much broader than that to give them a better chance of receiving the awards. But we do want to make sure people know what's out there. And I think we'll start with the travel scholarships. I'll take the first FAQ that comes up on these travel scholarships first, so we don't have to address it later. And that is, are we still doing travel scholarships when not many people are traveling? Yes, we are still taking applications and still planning to make those awards. I say we, not AI Colorado, the foundation, when I say that. You do have 2 years in which to plan and conduct your travel. So we are hoping, knock on wood, that sometime within the 2 years after you get your award, you'll be able to book that travel safely and have a very productive and enjoyable trip that helps benefit other people, learning from your exposure to different cultures and vernaculars and ways of designing and making impact on architecture around the world. So to have a specific case study of someone in the real world who has benefited from this grant, we're going to hear from Meg Schubert. Go ahead, Meg.
Sure. Thanks for having me, and nice to see you again, Bob, in the virtual format. So there's a siren going by. I'm Meg Schubert Allen. I'm an architect at Stantec, as Mike mentioned, and I was the lucky recipient alongside my husband, Drew Allen, who's also an architect. He's at AECOM now. We received the Robert and Virginia Fuller Scholarship in 2019. So I'll tell you a little bit about kind of our process for how we came about choosing our topic, where we decided to study, and kind of the impact that it's had on us. So with both of us being architects, we had some friends and colleagues who had received scholarships in the past, and we knew we wanted to do it, and we'd kind of started planning and eyeing 2019 as the year that we'd do it, but we weren't quite sure if we could do it jointly or if one of us would do it and then still travel together. So we kind of asked around and confirmed that we could apply jointly. I don't know how many others have done that, but it was something we were really excited about because I think it helps spread a wider net of impact, both for us and for our firms in AIA Colorado too, to have that spread amongst more people. And we were going to do it together anyway. So we, again, because we kind of knew the schedule and the timing of when these would come out, we started planning a lot in advance. We're both planners by nature. So I think we spent a lot more time researching and figuring out what we wanted to study to make it as impactful as possible. And we were both architects in the public sector. So we really wanted to kind of find cities that were of a similar growth rate and culture emphasis on nature and the outdoor environment, like Colorado and Denver specifically, where we've both been for 8 years now, and study how public architecture and the built environment out in those cities has shaped the growth of them. So we did a lot of research into where we wanted to go and decided to study across a number of Scandinavian cities that have a lot of similar characteristics, actually, besides the fact that they have a lot less light and a lot less sunlight, but a lot of similarities as far as how they've grown, the projected continuing growth, and some really exciting case studies. So we picked cities, picked specific case studies, and put together kind of a graphic application report. The application process was very straightforward. There's a survey monkey. I think that's still how they're doing it. And then we submitted our report that we'd been putting together that had kind of preliminary research, our selected cities, case studies, and some more information both on schedule and budget. We were really careful, because we were applying with 2 of us, to be very specific about how we'd spend that money too, looking at our travel and accommodations and trying to do it in a way where we got to see as much as we could, but in a fiscally responsible way. And we did add on to that ourselves a little bit for fun. But that was all a part of our application process as well. We were luckily able to travel at the end of 2019, towards the end of the year there. So we got our travel in before the world turned upside down. And I think it was a great opportunity and lent us some credence while we were out there too. We got to set up some meetings with people while we were out there. For one example, we met with a city planner from Stockholm who gave us a tour and walked us through kind of the development process of an eco district out there, Royal Seaport, that had a ton of case studies. That it was being able to say we were out there on a traveling scholarship like that to study this specifically, I think helped give us that opportunity to meet with someone and have a pretty educational experience, seeing something that we probably wouldn't have been able to see just walking around on our own. And I know that that's something, knowing friends and colleagues who have done this too, have gotten a lot from being able to reach out and contact local people, say, we're out here studying this, and can you talk to us? So that was a great experience. We did some social media takeovers and posts for AIA Colorado while we were out there. And our final deliverable was planned to be a kind of graphic booklet report that matched the template of what we submitted with. Admittedly, 2020 really threw us for a loop, so it's taken us a lot longer to get that together. But on top of that, we also, as we got back and started really digesting what all we'd learned, we just kept finding ourselves continuing to study and research more and more about all of this. And we've, touched base with people in our offices who are experts in some of these fields as well. And it's kind of expanded for us in a way that I don't think either of us really anticipated on the backside of this travel opportunity too. So we're actually still working on our final report for it, and have just, I think we were both kind of blown away by how much we did learn just from getting this opportunity to do it. And I think we see a lot of potential in the final deliverable that we are still working on to be able to share it with our firms in AIA Colorado and really learn it, use it as a learning tool for a broader net of people, so we can really impact beyond just ourselves with this as well. And at the same time, we also have talked very specifically, the 2 of us, about kind of almost checklists of things we learned that we can take into our own individual projects as well. There was kind of things from the broad city and neighborhood planning down to like detail and materiality that we found. So that's kind of the gist of what we did. I'll let the next person take over, and happy to answer any questions.
So Meg, I'll ask you a couple of questions before we transition. Sure. Has it changed your abilities as a practitioner, or the way you look at projects and the decisions you make on those designs by having that experience?
I think it definitely has. I've been working on the same project for 3 years, so I'm excited to start the next one and get to implement some of those thought processes. But a lot of, I think we gained a lot of knowledge too, just in cooperative planning early on in project phases as well. There's a lot to be learned from that, and I think that we can take a lot of that in our early phases of design to help kind of give pitches for certain ideas too. There was a lot of the public realm, even down to like how you deal with sidewalks and curbs and make it more of a pedestrian friendly space, where you have, you know, sidewalks interrupt a street instead of a street interrupt sidewalks. So I think it gave us a lot of knowledge and confidence in being able to talk about those things up front on projects where you can really make those decisions early on.
Yeah. Well, what's exciting to me about this particular opportunity is if you want to have a world-class architecture community here in Colorado, you bring members of that architecture community to the world, and then they come back and are able to expand their skill sets and their practice and share that with their colleagues and their firms, and it just elevates everything that we do as a community of practitioners. Another question or maybe a clarification is, you've mentioned the report that comes back to the foundation at the conclusion of your trip. And I don't want people to think it's like a doctoral thesis or something like that. We really state the minimally viable product of that final report is essentially a 2-page recap. That doesn't sound like a lot, but I find that most people go way beyond that. You know, they do a PowerPoint presentation or a book like you were talking about. So we don't want that to intimidate folks from applying for the grant. But I think as you experience this thing, you want to share even more than what is required.
Yes. Yeah, that's a fair point. I probably should have clarified that's not a requirement. We're both over analytical type A personalities too. So we've probably taken longer than most people, but I think it's also exciting to know how much it impacted us and how much more we've wanted to continue looking into what we learned while we were out there.
We've got a question asking, how long was your trip?
Oh yeah, so we were out there for 3 weeks, just over 3 weeks. And we kind of planned we ended up going to Oslo, Reykjavik, Stockholm, Copenhagen, Helsinki, and I think that was it. So we kind of planned to spend at least a few days in each of those locations. Some of them was a little shorter. Reykjavik was only a couple, and the others were at least 3 to 4 days.
Bob, there's another question you might be able to answer. Is there an age limit for this grant or a licensure requirement? Well, I think you're on mute.
You're on mute, Bob. You might
Bob,
need to start over.
Try to be considerate and muted myself out. There are a number of different requirements in terms of age limits on some of the traveling scholarships. I don't think there's any age limits on the academic scholarships. I know the Wagner is for architects under 50, but I don't believe that there's an age limit on the scholarship that you did, Meg. But I'd have to check and make sure that that's the case. But there are some age limits. But as the question that Meg addressed was, you know, is there a time limit on the what's the travel limit? There really isn't one. And as Mike suggested earlier, we awarded travel scholarships last year, none of which have traveled yet, and we've given them an extra year to let things settle down, and will likely extend it. It's not like the funds go away and aren't available. So don't be reluctant to apply for the scholarships just because travel is not advised at this time. And we've told those that were awarded last year to be sure that they wait until it's appropriate to travel. So don't be deterred by the restrictions on travel. As Mike said, bringing the world back to Colorado is a real important part of most of these scholarships. And I know that I was a recipient of Phil Fuller of the Fisher Scholarship back in the 70s. And I studied new towns in primarily the UK and some in Europe. But and it really informed my my practice. Architects build buildings in time and space, and the spaces that are left over after you create a structure are absolutely as important as the structures that you create and show up in the picture books. And they have a huge sociological impact on the communities that they exist in. And that's why I was interested in Meg's application and their process, because those kinds of things are things that architects aren't often exposed to. And because of the expensive travel, many architects don't get a chance to see what's happening in other countries, other regions, other climates. And so the travel scholarships are valuable in that respect to any architect that gets a chance to broaden their knowledge base for themselves and bring it back to their practice.
Each of those 5 scholarships has eligibility requirements that will vary between them, but not much, I would say. Generally speaking, though, there is a preference given to AI Colorado members. Membership has its privileges, and that is one of them. And for the most part, they're open to both practitioners and educators, because of course, that's also something that's very important, is if we're educating the next generation of architecture from a broader knowledge base and more world experience, that helps pass that knowledge on as well. So you can find all that eligibility criteria in that website link that's in the chat. And another follow-up question was, can you apply for multiple travel scholarships in the same year within the same application? I believe, Bob, you can correct me if this is wrong. I believe the answer is yes. That does not mean you'll get multiple scholarships. It usually means you'll get one of the ones that you applied for, not multiple of them.
That's accurate, Micah. And that's a dilemma we face every year, is because some people just shotgun the entire field and apply for everything. And the most important thing is that you apply for the proper scholarship. You don't want to apply to go study, Scandinavia if it's restricted to the study of the Americas, which means the Western Hemisphere is the only fair game that you're allowed for. And occasionally we'll look at someone's application and say, this is not the right scholarship that they've applied for, and we'll award a totally different scholarship that they have applied for. But it's important to look at what you're applying for and make sure that it fits the agenda and the process that you want to accomplish. But it's yes, you can apply for more than one, but you will not be awarded more than one.
Yeah.
And occasionally they are split. If there's 2 equal applicants, as was the case with mine, it was split between me and another architect. Or at that time we were just graduate students. So yeah, there's lots of permutations to it, but do read the qualifications and the requirements of each of the scholarships if you're interested in the travel scholarships.
Yeah, and the trustees will make that determination on their own. If they find a better fit than what was applied for, they won't reject it and say, sorry, try again next year and apply for this different category. If they find that there's a good match elsewhere that you didn't apply for, they'll go ahead and make that switch. Of course, check with you to see if that's okay as the applicant before finalizing it. But it's not a deal breaker if you get the application not exactly right. Well, that's a great summary, and glad to hear about a successful trip. It's making me jealous and remembering when I used to get on airplanes and go somewhere. But a little bit closer to home, our newest opportunity with the AEF is one we're really excited about. It's called the Licensure Advancement Fund. And I'm really glad this was in Jenny's bio. We hear often in the profession over its history about these times when the economy contracts and less construction gets done. Of course, that doesn't change the number of graduates who come out of architecture school every year. That's kind of a constant. It doesn't go up and down with the economy. And so we have these episodes over time where there's just not as many jobs available for people to pursue licensure and work in firms. And you hear the phrase a lost generation. If you look in larger firms and survey people of their graduation dates, you'll find that there's certain years that are missing that correspond with the times when the economy contracts. So in order for us to avoid this problem of a lost generation of architecture, of architects, we were nervous about entering into a period of contraction with COVID-19 and said, we have to keep people on the path of licensure. How can we do that? And so the Licensure Advancement Fund was launched. And Jenny was one of our inaugural recipients, along with our launch partner, AEF, who got us on the map with this program. So Jenny, please tell us more about that.
Yeah, I'm glad that you, I'm sorry. Yeah. Can you guys still hear me? Is everything okay?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. The moment I need to talk, I'm getting a phone call. So I'm glad that you mentioned that lost generation thing, because that is something that I feel like I'm definitely a part of. If you remember from my bio, I started teaching immediately out of graduate school, because there just weren't any jobs. So, and it was fine because teaching was something I've always wanted to do. But I did that for several years. And when I eventually went back into practice, I was pretty far behind my peers, or sort of kind of looking around and seeing that I didn't have any peers of my own age. And so licensure was actually very difficult for me. It's hard to find mentors. It was hard to get up the courage, I guess, to take the exams and feel prepared for those things. And so my story is really about how that intersected with COVID. So I'm hoping that this resonates with a lot of people that are listening today, because this idea of COVID interrupting things, but also financial problems kind of interrupting the career, your career path as well. Both of those are happening to me and are probably happening to a lot of people out there listening today. So I found myself in a position where I was finally taking my last exams. I had 2 left. I had been through several different versions of the exams. I had taken these exams several times. I felt like this is it, it's gonna happen. I had scheduled one of them, and if I passed, I was gonna go on to the next one. And then COVID happened, and like everyone else, it sort of uprooted our lives. And they canceled my exam. I was like, I was so ready to take the exam and I wanted it done. And they were like, sorry, we're canceling testing centers indefinitely. Don't know when we'll get back to that. Of course, now you're allowed to take them in the comforts of your home, but several months ago, a year ago, that wasn't the option. It was just sort of, we're gonna hope and wait for this to settle down and we'll open the testing centers again. So they waited several months, and when they opened the testing centers again, I was ready to go, but the only exams that I could sign up for were a long way away, like hours away. So I was like, well, I don't care. I'm not going to wait for something in Denver. I'm just going to sign up and I'm going to travel. And I'm going to take the last 2 back to back, which meant that I had to travel, get a hotel. My family came with me because, why not make a weekend of it? So we incurred a lot of extra expenses for that. And I eventually did pass them, which was exciting, but that sort of aligned with things happening at work where basically I found myself looking for a new position. So I had just spent all this money trying to get licensed, and I found myself out of a job. And a friend of mine was like, hey, the AIA helps with this kind of stuff. So that was really great to hear that and to look it up and find this fund. And then of course the next hurdle was, well, this is a scholarship, and scholarships are, notorious for being very difficult to apply for. And do I have that kind of energy? And so I got online, and like Meg said, it was very simple. It was a little survey monkey, and it was basically just asking, are you an AIA member? Tell us why you need this money and what's going on in your life. And it was a few minutes online. And I was like, well, we'll see what comes of this, because normally you kind of have to sign away your firstborn child to get a scholarship somewhere, right? I'm just thinking back to my, my university days, and I was just surprised at how easy this was. And that really speaks to the fund and the AIA and how much they really just want to help and support their members, because there wasn't a lot of back and forth involved in the process. It was, are you a member? Do you need help? We're here to help you. So that part I thought was great. And I did receive the funds, and it was very easy. And I was able to then use that money to sort of back pay for one of the seats of the exam. I was also able to pay for my NCARB renewal with that money, and then pay for my DORA application for licensure. And at that point, I wasn't sure, what was going on with my career. Of course, now, as you mentioned in my bio, I'm working as an architect at Craine Architecture. But several months ago, it was sort of up in the air. I wasn't sure. And I finally reached this point where I accomplished my goals, but I wasn't sure if I would actually be able to, pay to be licensed. So it was nice for the AIA to step in and say, we got you covered. And so I'm, now I've got the certificate, I've got the stamp, I have AIA to thank for the help that they provided for that. So I just want to say to anyone out there, if this story resonates with you, the AIA is here to help. And also, please feel free to reach out to me if you're struggling with your exams, or if you feel like you want some mentorship in your career. I just remember how difficult the whole process was, and it shouldn't be that hard. And I'm happy to be a resource for you as well as the AIA.
Well, thanks, Jenny. That was inspiring to hear the road that you were on, the process, and even though it took some detours and ups and downs, it's worked out for the better. And you've described, I promised people we have done no preparation for this material with the presenters, but you couldn't have said it better about our aspirations for how this would work. That this is stressful enough, right? Just taking the exams is not fun. It's anxiety producing, even in the best of times. And when you're experiencing economic hardship and the pandemic and everything else that's going on in your world, the last thing you want to do is have another wrench thrown in front of you. And so we just want to make this simple, straightforward. If you've had a setback, don't let it deter you. Keep going. We want you in the profession. We want you to feel like we're here to help. And so Jenny is one of 14 people who received this scholarship last year. And it's back again. So we're taking another round of applicants, and we hope we can do several more. And just to recap what Jenny had mentioned, it's a maximum amount of 500 for the year. You've got a year in which to spend it. So even if you don't have a seat time scheduled yet, don't worry about it. If you intend to take the exam, you can use that money for an ARE section seat time, or which is now possibly online. You can use it for ARE prep materials. You can use it for your NCARB fees and for DORA registration. So hope we can help more people next year on that one. Thanks, Jenny. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for letting me tell my story.
And thanks especially for offering yourself up as a resource.
Yes, and I stand behind that. I know there's a lot of people out there that have a hard time finding mentors or are a little shy about doing that in their own office. And if you want to reach out to me, I'm a nice person. Look me up, give me a call.
And I will say internally, we get an alert every time someone enters the SurveyMonkey and fills out that form, and it's like a little cause of celebration. It's like, hey, somebody got in the system and applied. And so we turn those around quickly, because we know it's more than just something you do on a coffee break. Why not? Maybe I think about that. There's some internal dilemma that's probably going on before you even get into that system. So once you fill something out, we want to make sure it happens as quickly as possible on the delivery and follow through. And then I have to give kudos to our board. We came up with this idea almost literally within one board meeting, and a letter to AEF afterwards. And they said, yeah, we're in. We'll be your 100% underwriter of this program. So every once in a while, a good idea happens and it takes off like wildfire real quick. So that's the AEF Licensure Advancement Fund. And last but certainly not least is probably where most of the money from the Education Foundation goes on an annual basis is the academic scholarships. And here to tell us more about one of those scholarship experiences is Victor. So welcome, Victor, and take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be here. So again, my name is Victor Gonzalez. I was born and raised in Colorado Springs, Colorado. So I'm from here locally. I'm a first-generation college student. My family's from Mexico. So the whole realm of architecture is relatively new to myself, and my family didn't really have any first impressions. I think my education with architecture and that relationship first started my junior year of high school, when I was just like really trying to get a glimpse of what the future of architecture education was, because I didn't really have an idea. So I actually got a spot with a high school program here in Colorado Springs with RTA Architects. They offered like a 5-week architecture program for high school students. So I really took advantage of that, and I just knew, just like that whole experience, that I wanted to pursue that education. So I took it forward. So I started applying to school and stuff, and I ended up at CU Boulder. And now I'm a senior at CU Boulder, so coming up on graduation here in May, hopefully. And so I received the Colorado North Scholarship my junior year. So that was 2019 to 2020. So the application process for that was a little bit different just because it's through the university. So that application process was more with the program of environmental design. And so they had like a separate scholarship application that had to be filled out. And so like it was pretty intense application, just like multiple essays. But that in itself just shows dedication that you're striving towards just receiving some financial support for your education. So the way that it worked, I filled out the application, and then that went to the scholarship committee in the program of environmental design. And then based on the application, they kind of like rewarded certain scholarships for certain students depending on the application. So that was one of the ones I ended up receiving. So I got that from my junior year in EVD. So that just benefited me a lot because that went straight towards my tuition, and we know that tuition is pretty expensive. So it's one thing less to worry about in a way, just receiving that reward. So I was really, really thankful, and I actually didn't even know that the program of environmental design had that partnership with AIA Colorado. So it was really cool just to see that relationship being there, and just extending my gratitude to AIA Colorado. So I feel like that reward in itself was just a really good way of continuing to sharpen my leadership skills, which is what essentially has me in the positions of like the vice president of the AIS chapter here at CU, and also like executive chair for Designers Without Boundaries, which is a first generation scholarship program. And so just having that as a means of support has helped me in a way just to focus on those specific skills and building onto my academics and focus on studio and just really pursuing that education finally here, hopefully coming to an end for undergrad. And so, yeah, and like even receiving that scholarship, I've had like some workshops here and there for other students in the program of environmental design, just like really helping them with their application process. So I've been asked by like Nate Jones, which is like pretty much one of our scholarship committee members, like, hey, you got the scholarship, can you help out like this student and like refining their application, or what should they specifically look for? So I've been used as a resource throughout environmental design, and I'm more than happy to like just help out a student, because I know I was once in their shoes and I would have appreciated that guidance. So that's pretty much my experience with the scholarship. Again, it's helped me a lot, and just even being here on this panel as a way of me extending that gratitude to AI Colorado for providing me with that support. So yeah, I'm more than happy to answer more questions and just like about my experience and stuff. But again, just super grateful and happy to be here.
Okay, so the most important question for Victor is, when do you graduate and what's next?
Oh, so I graduated in May, and so that's exciting. And so just focus on wrapping up strong. My initial plan before COVID hit was just to go straight into grad school and just like continue on that momentum and just like studying and stuff. But the whole situation with remote learning is just not fun. So I've just like really just have to take a break from everything that remote learning is because it's not the best. And I definitely don't want my grad studies to primarily be online just because of the same reason. It's really, I would just prefer not for it to be online. So taking some time off and just focusing on just like reflecting and how I'm here locally in Colorado Springs right now. So having that transition from Boulder to Colorado Springs, it's just kind of like the hub that I'm in right now, and just trying to get in somewhere and hopefully working on that year off and getting some experience in with some of the local firms here. And then just returning back to grad school. Hopefully the world is in a better situation by then. So the whole remote learning isn't the primary way of continuing studies and getting that graduate degree. So yeah, and just continuing my involvement with AIS, because I'm also involved with like the national committees and stuff, and also continuing my work with AI Colorado, being on the editorial committee and the JEDI committee. So just looking forward to that right now. Again, a lot is up in the air just due to COVID and everything going on around us. So just pretty much playing it, going with the flow pretty much, but hopefully the future plan works out. So yeah.
So Springs Area Architects, this talent is available for a limited time offer until he goes to grad school. So make a note.
Yes.
We got a question from someone down in that area that is curious. How did you learn about the RTA Architect Shadow Program? Was it high school teachers or counselors that talked about it?
Yeah, so I had to go out of my way because like my high school wasn't really providing me like with information about that, because like even during that summer before senior year, I went to an architecture camp at Penn State too. So like they flew me out there and stuff just to get that first glimpse of what architecture is, because I wasn't really getting that like with my high school education. So I literally just like Googled just like architecture high school programs, and like on a snow day. So, and then like, I just like looked into it and I saw that I was here in Springs. I was like, what is this? And then like, I saw that the deadline was like that exact same day that I had the snow day. So like I applied real quick. I was like, oh my gosh, this deadline is today. Like, oh my gosh, I don't even know if I'm gonna get in. And then like, I got a call, her name was Allison. Saying like we had one spot left too, so just like wanted to welcome you and stuff. And so the first class was that Wednesday, and so yeah, I went to class, completed the program. It was a lot of fun and just provided me with that insight. So yeah, I'm pretty sure they still have the program up and running too. So if anybody's looking into it, it's just RTA Architecture High School program, and it's with the RTA Architects firm here in Springs.
That's great. Back when snow days used to mean they closed down school, you didn't have to log into a computer.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing, a related item now that you bring that up that I'll mention is the JEDI committee is actually working on a compendium and database of programs for high school students to get exposed to architecture. So there's going to be an interactive map that will probably launch sometime this year. So that's one specific program that RTA offers, but there's several more around the state that we want to spread the news on too. I want to talk more specifically, Victor, about that the post-application process. So one of the things that the AEF wants to do is make it as seamless as possible. You know, we don't want there's no need for us to exchange checks and make sure it gets deposited in the right account. So when we go through the school, what it does is it just brings it right off your bill. It just goes directly to your program in that scholarship recipient's name, and it's really hands-off and seamless. At least that's the goal. Is that how it worked out for you?
Yes, that's pretty much exactly how it worked out. So it was pretty much just a notification through the university saying like, hey, you got awarded this. Do you accept, yes or no? And so you just have to like digitally like sign off on it. And then again, it gets processed through the financial aid office. And then it, like you said, it goes directly towards your bill, takes that amount off. And so pretty hands off until like you just sign off on it and you're just like attentive of your email, making sure that like it's getting processed and stuff. I know I even called up financial aid. I was like, did y'all get it? Yes or no? Like, I'm just trying to make sure I'm not being charged because I got this, I applied for it. But yeah, it was pretty straightforward. The process was easy. So yeah, it was pretty hands-on.
Good. Well, there's 10 different academic scholarships that you'll find online with our application, and almost $25,000 in funds available for the upcoming academic year. So please be sure to find one that works for you, and we look forward to seeing that application. Okay, so any questions from our participants that we haven't covered? We've taken some along the way, which is great. But with the time remaining, I just want to make sure that we answered any questions or got any comments that people have online to make sure that we've got all the bases covered. There's a question, logistical question from someone who got here midstream. Will the recording be available? We are recording it. AIA Colorado has a YouTube channel where we post all these presentations, so that should be once we just do some real basic editing to make sure everything worked out okay. It takes a few days. If it's not up by the end of this week, it'll definitely, we almost always get it up by the following Monday. So for those who maybe joined halfway through, or people who heard something and couldn't write it down fast enough and want to review it later, that's available. And if you know of people who didn't have the opportunity to log on today, but might be interested in some of these programs, you can also share that link with them as well. So good question. Any other questions or comments from folks? Or between our panel, any conversation or reaction?
I'd just like to, excuse me, take this opportunity to thank Mike and the AIA Colorado office for putting this on. The partnership between the Education Foundation and AIA Colorado goes back to the very inception of the foundation. And we've been remiss in making it less accessible than it should have been. As Meg mentioned and Victor mentioned, it's pretty much word of mouth. And this effort by Mike and the staff at AIA Colorado is an outreach. We've recently redone some corporate identity work and gotten some of our house in order during this weird kind of period we're in. And hopefully this will be something that we can continue as well, so that we can move forward. And kudos to the AIA Colorado office with the Architecture Licensure Fund. It truly was an innovative effort and is being talked about nationally. And it originated out of AIA Colorado, and AIA Colorado has been a leader in the architectural profession for years and is well recognized nationally. And it's because of ideas and initiatives such as this that we were tickled to death to be able to help make the funds available for it.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate that. And of course, on behalf of everybody at Colorado, we really enjoy this partnership and want to help elevate it as much as possible. And it's one of the coolest things we did last year, to be honest with you, the Licensure Advancement Fund. I don't know of another chapter in the country that does something like it. And in fact, Jenny was able to present to a national audience through Black Spectacles, which is one of the big ARE prep platforms out there. And we got contacted after the fact by Black Spectacles saying, oh my gosh, one of your scholarship recipients talked about this, and it's amazing, you know, can we share the news? And we said, of course you can. And then we've since shared it within our region, the Western Mountain region, which is 6 states around us, and with the national organization, hoping that they'll replicate it. And in fact, AI Minnesota has done something similar. So it's starting to, you know, spread across the country, and we hope more people can do the same thing. So thanks for giving that a bigger audience, Jenny. We appreciate it.
Always. I'm always going to brag about you guys.
So any other questions or comments? If the panelists don't mind, because you've all said something along the lines of reach out to me, ask me questions. You know, I'm a resource. If you wouldn't mind dropping your email or preferred contact method into the chat for people who might want to follow up on that request, that would be great before we log off. And then the most important thing to note is March 1st. March 1st, March 1st, March 1st, put that in your calendar. That's the deadline. I know the foundation trustees meet very quickly after that. They put a meeting together with their contacts at the schools of architecture to look at all the applications and get those determinations made as soon as possible, because we don't want people who apply waiting around forever anxiously to decide to figure out if they got it or not. So make a note of that application deadline. Go to our website. It's the first link in the chat where it has all the descriptions and links to the applications. And we wish you all success. Of course, if you have any questions of AI Colorado, you can contact us. You got here, so you know where to find us. And the last thing I'll say is this is the first of many such programs. So next week, we're continuing our theme of celebrating good news. And we've got a program lined up called Demystifying Fellowship. Fellowship in the American Institute of Architects is probably the highest honor an individual practitioner can attain. And a lot of people don't really know how to do that. So we've got members of the College of Fellows nominating committee who are going to walk us through what fellowship means, how you get there, how you build a case. And really, you need to start thinking about it from some of the earliest stages of your career about how you achieve a designation that marks you as one of the tops in your field of architecture. And shoot, even if you don't get it, it's good to think about how you can be a leader in the field, regardless of whether it leads to an award or a recognition of any kind. So that's next week, same time. It'll be a little longer because there's more details to go over, but we hope you can join us. And for the group today, Jenny, Victor, Meg, Bob, great stuff. Appreciate you sharing it. And we look forward to seeing what you guys do next.